Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're at. This is Dr. Sanchez, and I'm going through the competencies for early career HR professionals. And I'm going to discuss the communication competencies. So the learning objectives is to explain the relevance of communication competency to the HR professional, the subcompetencies, and analyze the role of communication competency plays in the HR real world, and demonstrate the ability to apply the communications competency in various topics. So this is what we're going to go through: definition, and then how to effectively run a meeting, facilitation skills, which we have a separate video on that, and conversations in social media. So I hope all of you know the power of communication, because this has been a lifelong struggle for me. I have struggled with this competency for my 35 years. And this has always been the lowest score I have gotten in any evaluation in those 35 years of human resources. And so I really try to perfect this, and it's my number one goal to improve my communication skills and competency in the HR world. So what's the definition? It's the ability to effectively exchange information with stakeholders. Now, think about that, exchange. When we look at the description, it involves a wide variety of ranges: verbal, written. HR interactions is the foundation on which relationships are built and maintained. So watch the relationship webcast, because communication is critical to building relationships. And so here are the examples: fielding employee grievances, collaborating with other organizational units to address business challenges, describing policies and procedures, setting goals, and communicating progress. So my struggle has always been that I am a person that wants my way, and I don't really use active listening very well. And so when I listen to employee grievances, I've already made my choice about whether they're right or wrong. Or when I'm listening to my business partners, I always think, oh, they're on the wrong path. I can describe policies and procedures really well and set goals, but my goals are set based on what I think HR should do, and not based on what the business really wants. And then this is my most difficult challenge, is communicating the progress. So I think when I get the buy-in up front, I don't have to go back all the time and discuss what the progress is. And that has not served me well in my deficiency. So hopefully all of you listening to this webcast will learn from my grave mistakes. So what are the subcompetencies? Well, obviously verbal, the written skills. Presentation skills is really critical. And I was lucky enough to have a mentor that when I would present to the board of directors of a large corporation, Delta Airlines, he would tell me point blank when I came out of that presentation, Diane, you did this really well, but you did not do these things well. And so if you've got somebody that you trust, you need to perfect your presentation skills, because as you grow in your HR career, that will become more and more important, especially at the executive levels, because you will be presenting many times about the career or the HR issues that are presented at your company. Persuasion, always important diplomacy, especially when you travel globally. And when I was with Boeing, I traveled globally and really had to learn their different ways of communicating. Perceptual objectivity, active listening. If any of you can take a separate class on active listening, this really, really helped me to learn to listen. And what they say is you should talk 20% and listen 80%. And that's always been a struggle for me. And I think for a lot of HR people, because we, think we know right and wrong sometimes, but really listening to those who are presenting their ideas is super important. Timely feedback, effective facilitation skills, meeting effectiveness. I'm sure many of you have sat through hours and hours of meetings and wondered what got done, and then you have to get your work done when you go home. And hopefully you'll be able to facilitate more meetings and you can get it done in a timely manner. No meetings should go over an hour. Social technology and social media savvy, and public relations. And this is an important one for me personally, because I was Vice President of Human Resources at American Airlines when 9/11 happened. And I had no idea the amount of press and the amount of TV and interviews that were required of me. And I think that's very much part of public relations that I think we all need to learn more about, because at one point we will be asked the human element of any of our 9/11s. Whatever company you're in, wherever your business is, whatever you do, you will eventually have your 9/11. And to be prepared for that in the public is important. And you can see that by Starbucks, with their videos going viral, and now with social media. You just never know what's going to happen and how you will have to present in the public. So, what are the behaviors? Clear, concise information, verbal, written, electronic formats, public, and for organizational consumption. Listen actively and empathetically to views of others. Delivers critical information to all stakeholders. And this is an important one, because you don't have to deliver all the information. You have to deliver what's critical. And in human resources, there's a certain amount of course, confidentiality, but there's some critical information that you have to discern to give to your stakeholders. And that's important because they want information from you. And you have to discern between confidential and critical. Seeks further information to clarify ambiguity. Constructive feedback is really important. And learning how to teach managers how to give performance reviews, how to give verbal, written feedback, warnings to employees, how they need to receive feedback as well. Ensure effective communication throughout the organization. During 9/11, American Airlines had communications under our department, and I cannot tell you how important that was on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, but primarily we did it more than twice a day for our employees to understand what was going on. And I mean internal communications. There's always an external communications, but you have to be thoughtful in conjunction with them, because employees do talk to the external media, and provide thoughtful feedback in appropriate situations. We have to have proactive communications, and I learned that very much during 9/11. Making sure I met with my staff twice a day, in the morning and in the afternoon, and kept them very aware of what was happening and what we needed to do. Demonstrate understanding of the audience perspective, and knowing your customer, knowing what they need, treating constructive feedback as a developmental opportunity. As I spoke in previous videos, my performance review was a 360 review at Boeing. I got feedback from my boss, my peers, vice president peers, and my direct reports that were all directors, and it was very tough. This was my lowest score, and the feedback was phenomenal, because I think over the 35 years I've learned how to communicate more properly and consistently. And welcome other opportunities to have competing points of view. You're not always the one in the room that has the right answer, and sometimes that's very difficult for human resources professionals, as well as me. And so we've got to think, hey, there's got to be some other opportunities, especially with the new millennials and the Gen Zs. They're going to have different points of view than we've had in the past. And that's considering new perspectives. Leading effective and efficient meetings. You're going to be doing calibration meetings. You're going to be doing performance management meetings. You have to figure out, as a practitioner, how to do that effectively and efficiently. Helps manage communication, not just on HR issues. And I talked about American Airlines and 9/11, and that really taught me that it wasn't just internal things to communicate, but external things from my company that we needed to communicate nationwide. And then the world of communication technology and social media, which are really challenging a lot of employers these days, because things go viral, especially for employers. So wonderful communication behaviors we need to know. All right, so how do we develop them? We participate in training programs, especially active listening. You must seek out an active listening course that talks about the fundamentals of active listening. It was the best thing that I ever did. Pay attention to communication methods, email, texting, just decide which one's the best per person, and identify which methods are effective and ineffective, so that you have your own communication style. Seek out public opportunities to speak. And this has always been difficult for me, but I think if you are an HR practitioner, learning how to do public speaking, talking about your company, especially at colleges, college night, when you're talking about your companies, in the community, talking about your companies, any opportunity to do public speaking is a great opportunity, and I know it's very, very difficult. Take an assignment to put a presentation together, and then take an assignment that will require communication with stakeholders throughout the process. So that could be when you're developing maybe a communication plan for a potential risk management issue or safety issue. making sure that all stakeholders are included in the process, and you take charge of that presentation. Sign up for a course. There's courses on speaking. I've not done well in those courses. There's tons on YouTube, but technical writing, interpersonal communication, public speaking, there's Toastmasters. I haven't really been successful in those. I watch YouTube videos, and it has helped me greatly. Carefully prepare emails. Try very hard not to respond to an email emotionally, and be as concise as possible. If an email is more than a paragraph, people don't read it. So try to concise your message as much as possible. Prepare an agenda when you've got a meeting. Share a strategic idea in a meeting. And when we get to strategy, that's going to become even more important. Develop a training program. I think communication skills is a great program to start with. And really increase your knowledge of social media and your presence, your company presence, your recruiting presence is all fantastic on social media. And then analyze the communications you receive for differences in tone and specificity as directed to different levels and audiences. So this is really looking at your email and questioning how will that person perceive it, especially if you're sending one to the director level or a vice president level. You want to make sure that you're concise and you're not emotional in this, and that it's business focused. All right, so effective verbal communications and meeting facilitation. So have you ever given a public presentations? If you have not, please try to do so. There's lots of opportunity. There's always community events that are looking for people from a company to speak. If you have, what was the experience like? People tell me I'm a good speaker, but when I leave the stage, I feel not so good. And it's always at my forefront is, did I get my message across? Was I articulate? I've looked at videos of myself, and that has always challenged me to get better and better. So this is probably one of the more difficult things for all of us, is to learn how to present and then feel like we are presenting well. So delivery tips, expect that you may feel you have forgotten everything. That is so true. Do not use notes. That is difficult to do. I think things on the PowerPoint, since we don't want to use notes, we put everything on a PowerPoint. We have to learn just bullets, because you want the speaker to look at you. And I always find that telling stories is the best way to get your message across. And if you look at the great speakers, Martin Luther King and Barack Obama, all of those that come to mind as great speakers, they never used notes, and they told stories. And that's a clever way to reorientate yourself during the presentation. Point out a few ideas on the slide when you're speaking. Do not read from it, which I'm doing now, but I want to make sure I capture everything. But I want to tell stories and examples throughout my webcasts. If you forget a point, make fun of yourself. Try to get some laughter. Make it easygoing for others, and provide some levity in your presentation. Don't point out the fact that you missed something, or because that will be what people remember. And do not go back and cover a point you missed if it does not matter. Unless it's a significant point that you missed, then you can go back. And as you can tell in my webcasts, I do that often. I forget some things and then I go back to a specific one I want you to learn. Extremely difficult. All right, so in an ineffective meeting on the left, you can see all of these. Basically, you don't know who's leading the meeting. Not even sure why the meeting is being held. The meeting room is poor. It doesn't lack an agenda. People are distracted. The big problem in our meetings today is people are using their phones. And that is going to have to be something that you're going to have to determine is what you should or should not allow. And that's up to you. I find that if I make it short and sweet, people don't use their phones. If I say, here's the agenda, we're going to do this in 20 minutes, I would ask that you're not on your phone so that we can get through the topic. Please no sidebar discussions. And we're starting now. I always start on time and I end on time. So, this is important for you to decide how you're going to run a meeting. The best meetings are clearly stated in what's the purpose and what's the outcome. And, a meeting is different than a brainstorming meeting. So if you're going to have a brainstorming meeting, that's fine. Keep it to half an hour. If you're going to stick to a schedule and say this is going to be done in a half an hour, then do it. Let those people that are quietly not participating, I always ask them if they have any feedback. So that's the way to keep meetings engaged. I'm highly organized. I think most of you are. So this is the way we can facilitate a great meeting. And make sure everybody comes prepared. So this is the causes of ineffective meetings. We all know this. No planning, no process, wrong people invited, unclear roles, individuals unwilling to participate, poorly structured, no accountability. So please try not to do that. So Mehrabian, theory of communication. So this is studies that he did, and we have heard it probably all our lives, that written communication is only about 7% of really what people grasp and care about. 38% is great communication for individuals, and then nonverbal, facial expressions, body language, 55% of the communication that we're projecting is having the meaning based on our facial expressions and body language. So it's important that when you go into a meeting, you have an agenda, you're starting on time, you're ending on time, and you follow up with a very short email about what happened. I'm an audio learner. Some people are a written learner. So some are tactical, which is being in the meeting. So really try to address each of these communication methods so that people can learn what your message is all about. All right, so lesson 3, effective social media. I know most of us now are, especially the millennials and the Gen Zers, has taught us how to use social media. And we can do it in recruiting, communications, blogging, microblogging, sharing, collaboration, group communication. I am thrilled that I am learning more and more about this every day. And if you're an HR practitioner, you should have high interest in this because it's amazing. I just read a study that Gen Y's comprehension is less than 30 seconds. And so when we talk about training and development, we're now doing micro training. And so that's one of the things that is really coming up is instead of these long webcasts, 20 minutes, we're doing micro learning. So it's a great place to start. Onboarding, you can do all the paperwork and everything through social media, but particularly we've been using it for recruiting. And like I said, millennials were raised on social media, but please don't discount the boomers. They are learning it and they are loving it. So, and the reason why is because we're getting overwhelmed by emails. And so when you get emails, you just start delete, delete, delete. But when you're on social media, and I would look at how long you're on Facebook other than how long you are on email, and I will bet you're on Facebook or Twitter or all those others more than you're on email. And so the other thing is organizations are becoming more geographically dispersed, and they have their own internal social media. And so that's terrific for companies to use that. Instant messaging and all that has really helped them. And it really does align with our natural desire to share our knowledge and seek out those that we consider experts. So there are some privacy concerns. Every state has a different privacy on social media. California is the more strict. Personal viewpoints are easily assumed to be organizational positions on issues, so you should have a social media policy. And militia postings are difficult to control. So like I said, you need to have a social media policy that addresses all this for your employees. Thank you for listening to this webcast on communications, and I look forward to your questions or emails.